Okay, my name is Vincenza, and I'm joined by my colleague Kellen. We're with Utah State University Extension. We're both program coordinators for this program called the Empowering Financial Wellness Program, which is sponsored by USU Extension as well as Utah Department of Workforce Services. So we have a grant to teach financial literacy and capability throughout the state of Utah. And we teach in person and we teach webinars. And so that's what we do in all 29 counties. And so we're here today to try to demystify the credit report. It is so important to understand the credit report and understand how it fits in your overall financial wellness. And that's why we decided to talk about cracking the code with credit reports. So that's our topic today. And throughout today's presentation, I'm going to be referring to this booklet. It's called Want Credit to Work for You, and it is developed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. These booklets are free. You go on their website if you wanted to order them, maybe for your classroom. Also, all of the items that are in the booklet, they also have standalone PDF files that you can download, that you could use maybe like as a worksheet to use for a lesson or something like that. So Kellen, if there's anybody that doesn't have, there had some people that walked in, if you want to make sure everybody has a booklet. Probably have to open a...
Yeah, who still needs one of these booklets?
And which website is this we ordered from?
Yeah, if you go to cfpb.gov, on the very back, Your Money, Your Goals, full disclosure, they have a really terrible search engine on their website. I have better success when I just Google it. Like if I'm looking for a particular worksheet or something, I always have better. It's like you have to dig sometimes and dig to find it.
Google this.
Yeah, I Google, yes, CFPB and then whatever the title of the thing I'm looking for. I've just found more success that way. And they know that. They know they don't have a great search engine. So just trying to save you some frustration because I know that I've been frustrated with that. Okay. This is not working.
Down button.
Down button. Okay. I'm sorry they're trying to troubleshoot the screen that it's blurry. Sorry about that. At least it's blurry to me, right? Yeah. So wanted to talk about our objectives today. We're going to talk about why it's so important, like the what if. Why is it so important to check our credit reports? And then the relationship that often a lot of, especially younger people, don't understand the relationship between the credit report and the credit score and how the score is based on what's in the credit report. A lot of people don't make that connection. And then lastly, we get a lot of questions. We teach a lot of webinars on this topic and in-person classes, and there are a lot of myths that float around in our society about credit. And so we're just going to have a little fun and just kind of try to dispel some of those myths and talk about what are the common questions that people typically have around credit. So this was an interesting article that I read recently in the news. There was a report that was compiled by a consulting firm and NextGen Personal Finance, and they're a nonprofit. If you're not familiar with them, focused on providing financial education to middle school and high school students. And they found that there's a lifetime benefit of about $100,000 of having a one semester course in personal finance. So that's just one semester. And then teenage financial literacy is positively correlated with asset accumulation, so building their net worth by age 25. And then a lot of that financial value for these young people comes from learning how to avoid high interest credit card debt, leveraging better credit scores, and securing preferential borrowing rates, like when they get mortgages or loans, things like that. And also for student loans. Also for insurance, saving money on auto, our credit score influence our insurance rates, like for auto, for home insurance. So if you take that $100,000 and you multiply it across families and communities, it's an incredible economic engine, because what happens is they learn stuff and then they tell their parents, right? And so that's how it works. And so I just thought that was really fascinating research, that somebody actually could put a price tag on the value of a financial education. So as I mentioned, this is the toolkit that I'll refer to throughout today's presentation. Kellen and I will be co-presenting today. And they've organized it in a fun way. They have, we call this the giraffe book, and then inside, all of the sections, they're all associated with a different animal. And each thing, so there's 8 tools in this entire booklet, and they focus on different parts about credit. And so I'll refer to that throughout today's presentation. And you can order more. You can go on their website. They have an ordering system where you can order. They come in bundles of 10. Sometimes they're on back order. That's been my experience. Some of them are more popular than others, but this is just one of many. They have other subjects like debt, budgeting, having problems paying bills. I'm trying to think all the ones, savings. So there's all different categories. I think there's at least 4 or 5.
There is 4. There's credit, there's behind on bills, there is saving, and there's getting out of debt.
Getting out of debt, yeah. So today we're going to focus on the credit one. Okay, so the first one is we're just going to talk about the importance of checking credit reports. So the reason why it's so important to be able for everybody to check their credit reports is it has information about where you live, how well you repay your debt, if you file for bankruptcy. Think of it as like a financial report card. And checking it regularly is really important for many reasons. So accuracy, it's really important that we make sure that our credit reports are accurate. Number one, that's the first place where we can make sure it's accurate, make sure it's complete, there's complete information, and also monitoring for identity theft. If you're looking at your credit report and there's something that you don't recognize on there or is inaccurate, it needs to be corrected. A lot of times, inaccurate information can negatively affect you because the credit score is based on the information in the credit report. So if we correct our reports, that may increase our credit score simply because either it's missing positive information or we're getting rid of negative, inaccurate information. Now, I did want to mention that you can check, it's called annualcreditreport.com, but you actually can check them once a week for free. So the way the rule was written is that the credit bureaus allow consumers to check their credit reports, all 3, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, for free once a year. That's why they called it annual credit report. But since the pandemic, because there was such a tick increase in identity theft because of people stealing, like people got desperate, benefits, insurance benefits, the list goes on, they decided to allow folks to, first it was temporary. It was like, oh, for the next 12 months, you can check it once a week for free. And then after the second year in the pandemic, oh, we're going to continue that. Well, now they made it permanent. So I don't know if they'll change the name of the website, but actually everybody could check their credit reports from all 3 bureaus once a week for free. And this is the only federally mandated website. It's called annualcreditreport.com. And it even says up there, what I circled, it says free weekly. So they've updated the verbiage on their website. They just haven't updated their website name. And just understand that it's not the first hit with, a lot of people will Google free credit report. It's not the first hit on the search engine. So just know that it's something others come up where they're actually going to try to get you to sign up for some kind of identity theft monitoring protection, unless that's what the consumer is actually looking for. But you will never have to provide any credit card information. You're not getting signed up for anything other than just checking your own credit reports. So just be aware of that. And also, I notice every time I go in and check, they update a little bit their security, which is a good thing. So now it's definitely with all 3 two-factor authentication. So you'll have to provide them with an email and a phone number, and then typically you'll get a code to your email or to your phone number. You'll get a text. and then you have to enter that information in order to continue the process of checking your credit report. So general guideline, you should check your credit reports, all three, at least once a year. And there's no harm in checking it more often. Kellen, how do I move up this section here? How do I move that down? I just want to scroll through here. Just put okay. All right. Also, one thing I want to mention about minors and their credit, minors should not have a credit profile. So if somebody tried to check their credit report and they weren't able to get it, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can't have a credit report if you don't have credit history. But maybe Kellen can share a story about what happened with you when were you in college or?
Yeah, the first time I went to go apply for a loan, I hadn't checked my credit report beforehand because I had no idea to do that. I was 18. So I went to go apply for this, and they denied me because my credit score was so low, because someone had been using my information to sign up for credit cards in California when I was 6 years old. And so it was an easy fix. I was able to just say, hey, obviously I was not named Jose in California getting credit cards when I was 6 years old. And they were able to fix that. But it was a hassle. I ended up having to wait a few extra days to get approved for this loan that I was getting for my car. And it turned into this huge hassle to try to get them to fix it. So it does happen. This identity theft, people taking your information, it happens all the time to everyone. Can even happen to minors. So it's important to be checking your credit.
And we'll give you some free tools about what you can do to kind of lock it down and protect it even more, whether it's for a minor or whether it's for an adult. Okay. And the other thing is where a minor might have a credit profile or a credit report is if they can be added. For example, I have my teenager added as an authorized user on 2 of my credit cards. He doesn't know that he's an authorized user, but what's happening is he's able to build credit based on my behavior. My husband and I both have him on our cards. And so they're able to build credit. They don't have to use the card in order to build credit history. And so he'll never use it because he's only 14. So it just depends on the credit card issuer. Some credit card issuers don't allow minors to be added. Some of them do. And if you are going to add a minor as an authorized user on a credit card, just make sure that that credit card actually will report it on their profile if that is your intent. Otherwise, there's really no point in doing it. But again, they never have to use it because they no longer issue joint credit cards. They're always like, you're the primary and then you have you have an authorized user. They don't have joint credit card applications anymore. And I think that's mostly for liability for the credit card companies. Anybody have any questions about how that works? Okay. Because ultimately, if my son went to GameStop and knew that he had access to this credit card and charged it up and bought $1,000 worth of video games, I'm responsible because I'm the primary. So you just want to be mindful of that if we do have a younger person having a credit card, that ultimately the primary is responsible for the payment. Okay. Still not able to. Keeps moving. Kellen, sorry. It's my tech guy. Okay. So just, how do you get it over there?
It was on the other screen.
That's
just
why.
Move it back to this one.
Okay.
Move it left to get it back to this screen.
Okay, thank you, Kellen. I want to be on here.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to dive into the credit report and talk about the main 5 sections. Each credit reporting agency or each credit bureau, they're slightly different format, but they generally have all of these main 5 sections. And it's going to have, and if you look at this booklet, there is a section that is called, wow, I'm really struggling with this. I'm sorry, Kellen. It's this shared screen thing. I want to be back here. Okay.
There's no more notes.
Okay, that's why. Okay, so in your credit report, in your little booklet, there is a checklist of how do I make sure my credit report is accurate. So this is something you can actually look through and just kind of make notes. You could make copies of this. You could download this. There's actually a worksheet on their website that is a standalone that could be downloaded and used as like, okay, let's check a credit report and then go through each of the sections. Okay. And then this is the tool that, it's the one with the fish on it, if you were curious to know what that checklist. And it's just helpful for things to look at. What are some of the red flags? What are some things? And so I'm going to take you through, this is just an example credit report that I got from the internet. And so the red flags just are like, what are the main things that we want to look for? Making sure names are correct. Social security number, date of birth is really important. A misspelling of a name is not a big deal. It's human error. It's not going to affect the kind of credit you'd be able to qualify for. But if there's a social security number error or date of birth, that's a big deal. You need to dispute it. And then, again, just as a way to verify that it's really you, you will see employers listed on a credit report. It's not going to list every single employer you've ever worked for. Most likely one that you use on a credit application. Because you know when we apply for a credit card, where are you employed, etc. So don't be surprised if you don't see all of them. But again, it's a way to verify that, hey, this is really you. Because that's one of the questions. If you've checked your credit report, you know they ask you verifying identity information like, have you ever worked for this company? Do you have a mortgage and this dollar amount? Have you ever had a loan for a car? I helped somebody yesterday or 2 days ago pull her credit report and asked, what's your license plate number? I was like, I know mine because it's a vanity plate, but she's like, I got to go run outside and go see what it is. I have never memorized so I see the questions get a little bit more tricky. So worst case scenario, if you were trying to pull your credit report and you didn't answer the questions correctly, you can actually call in and then they'll mail it to you. That's what we ended up having to do with her because some of the questions she was just like, I don't remember. It's been a long time. The next section is public record information. There shouldn't be a whole lot in this unless you filed for bankruptcy. So they used to have tax liens and judgments on here, but they changed some legislation back in 2015, and they had so many strict requirements about what needs to be in there, how long, when it has to be updated, that the credit bureau said, forget it, we can never make these requirements. We're just not going to list tax liens and judgments on credit reports anymore. We're just going to put bankruptcies. So that's why that's the only thing that you would have there. So if somebody did file bankruptcy, they want to just make sure that the filing date is correct because bankruptcies will drop off your credit report after 10 years. So that's the only thing to note here. If you've never filed for bankruptcy, that's a big red flag. This next section, it's called account history. This might be also where you see anything that's been in collections. This is going to list all of the financial accounts that you have, and that's probably the most important part of the credit report. We want to make sure we recognize any accounts that are in there, and if we don't, then we need to take further action and contact the credit report. Anytime you see something that's inaccurate on a credit report, you need to contact the credit bureau that is reporting it as a first step. There are instructions in this booklet about what to do. We'll get into it when you want to dispute something, but any account you don't recognize, that could be a sign of identity theft because what folks will do is they'll open accounts using our information, like what happened to Kellen, even though he wasn't aware of it because as a kid, he's not checking his credit reports. But somebody was able to get a hold of his social security number or date of birth and open an account. So if you see that, maybe you're not getting the statements because the statements are getting mailed somewhere else and that person is just not paying them. So that could be a red flag. It's really important. Any negative information, if it is accurate, with the exception of bankruptcies, should automatically fall off after 7 years from it being reported, meaning reported late or gone to collections, etc. And if it's still on there after 7 years, we have the right to contact them and say, hey, you need to take this off my credit report. Because once that gets off, that's going to help lift up the profile and get a better credit score. The next one is just a credit account summary. So this is where you see, and sometimes they're in different orders on the reports. Some of them, it's like, that's the first thing you're going to see. The first thing they're going to bring to your attention if there's anything negative, like anything in collections or anything that's late. So you'll see something like this and you'll see, okay. There is a legend at the top, meaning 30. If you see 30, it means, if you see okay, it means it's been paid on time. If it's blank, it's because they didn't get any information from the lender or creditor for that particular month, or maybe it wasn't open yet, or maybe they're behind in getting that information supplied to the credit bureau. And then X means, on this particular, there's no information. So just know that there's usually a legend that explains. If you see okay, good, green checks, it's usually a good thing. But if you see like 60, 90, that means that that's when how many days the payment was reported late. So if you see that and say, hey, I've never paid late, that's an indication that you need to contact, because mistakes happen. You need to get that corrected and have them, you just have to prove that it was actually paid on time. Okay, the next one is also important. This is where have you heard the word like hard hit, soft pull, hard pull, hard check, soft check. So this is called your inquiries. So this is anybody that's accessed your credit report. You're going to see them listed in this section. So again, check to see who inquired. If you don't recognize them, that could be an indication that somebody tried to access your credit report, but maybe was not successful in obtaining credit, but they somehow got access to your credit report. So it's important that you understand the inquiries. Soft inquiries are what only you as the consumer can see. That's when you pull your own credit report, and that has no bearing on your credit at all. It's just noting that, okay, you went on this date and you pulled your credit reports. And inquiries will stay on your credit report for up to 2 years, hard inquiries. And then after that, they drop off. However, and we're going to talk about the credit score in a second, the effect on your credit score when you have hard inquiries, it's really only going to affect you for about a year. And then after that, it typically falls off. And so here's another thing. Any of you get those credit card pre-approved offers in the mail? Do you get those? If you ever find yourself annoyed by those, or you really don't want them, and you don't want to be solicited, but you want to be the one that goes and looks for credit card offers, you can go to a website. It's called Opt Out Prescreen. OPT, opt out, O-U-T, prescreen.com. Maybe you can put that on the board. Thank you, Kellen. And that will take you off marketing lists. So if you just don't want to get them, you're getting a bunch of junk mail and you don't want them, that will stop you for 5 years. You can do it online. You can do it snail mail too. And it can be permanent if you do it in writing in the mail. Yep, opt out prescreen. Thanks, Kellen. So you just won't get credit card solicitations by mail if you go to that website. So if you or anybody you know doesn't want those, you have the option of doing that. Okay, and then we just wanted to mention about disputing errors. So make sure, if you find a mistake on one credit report, it's important that you check the other two to make sure if it's being reported also on the other two or not. Then you want to make sure you dispute it with whoever's reporting it. And if it's all three, you need to dispute it with all three. They each have their own process for doing it. Some things you can dispute right online when you're signed into your account, because you'll typically have a username and password to get into like Equifax or Experian or TransUnion. And they have 30 days to investigate. Some things happen pretty quickly, but some things they need a little bit longer. And so it's really important after you've had something with the documentation, sometimes you have to mail things in, that you go back and check and make sure that they say it was corrected, you go back and make sure that actually it was corrected, that if it was removed or updated. Just to make sure. And so there is a section in here. It's the porcupine with the wrench. How do I get errors in my credit report fixed? So there's a little, they have form letters if you needed to dispute something, et cetera. It just gives you some basic steps on like, how do I do that? Any questions so far on the credit report? You can download, when you check your credit reports now, you can download them, you can save them as a PDF, you can print them out. So I find them helpful I just have a folder on my personal laptop where I just keep track of. And as a general rule, checking it at least once a year, good practice, once a quarter, but especially before you're about to apply for credit. I remember when I applied for my first mortgage, my mortgage broker said, Vincenzo, we can't really get you the best rate because you have something in collections on your credit report. And I was like, what is that? I was 25 years old. So it's important anytime you're about to apply for credit that you go and check it yourself and make sure everything is good to go. And then you also can know kind of where you stand. Because again, your credit score is really important for calculating your credit. The information in your credit report helps you calculate your credit score. And that's what our next section is. What is that relationship between the credit report and the credit score? So I worked as a financial counselor for service members for many, many years. And if you ask them what's in your credit report, they'd say, what's a credit report? But if I asked them what their credit score was, they had it on their phone. They're like, oh, I have a 750, like the bragging rights. But they never really understood what was the relationship. And a lot of people don't. They just know that it's a number, and the higher the number, the better it is for me. So you want to talk a little bit more about that the credit report is really a tool, and getting that credit score, it's really a tool for lenders because it helps them measure your credit risk. How likely are you to default on any money that you owe? And then also, it's just a summary of all of your credit history that you've had your whole life on dealing with credit. And then understanding that the credit report on the actual report itself does not have the credit score. That's a separate process. So you can get all of the information that's on your credit reports is information coming from a lot of sources. It can be coming from a bank, from credit card companies, from loan companies, collection agencies, governments. So the concept of evaluating a company or an individual's creditworthiness, this whole idea has been around since the 1800s. I think 1841 that's how far back it's going. And now it's just with the credit score, it's just a really easy automated way for somebody to put in our information, our name, our social security number, date of birth, and it pops up this magical 3-digit number, this algorithm. And they can tell by just that number, like, what is our credit worthiness? And it's been, over the years, it's been refined. There are lots of iterations of the credit score, and we're going to get into a little bit more about trying to get back to that screen. There we go. So what is a credit score? Mentioned it's that 3-digit number, and it's just it's a prediction number. It's a predictor because really nobody knows with 100% certainty. If somebody's going to give me a loan and I have a 750, they don't really know with 100% certainty that tomorrow I'm not going to go stop paying all my bills or lose my job or whatever. But it's just a predictability scale. And so they look at that number and they say, okay, based on this number, it's highly unlikely that Vincenza is going to default on all of her stuff and she's going to pay us back if we give her money. So again, it's from the information in your report. FICO is the main score. That's what this is here. There are others. Vantage is another popular score that is actually, so FICO came out, I believe, in 1989, Fair Isaac and Company. And then Vantage came out in 2006 to be a competitor to the FICO score. Vantage is the 3 credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. They got together, they developed their own algorithm. It's similar to FICO, but not exactly. But because 90% of lenders rely on a FICO score, that's what I'm going to focus on today is the FICO score. But know that if you pull a score and you see Vantage and you have a good Vantage score, you likely have a good FICO score. So you get a good indication of what you are, where you stand. The range of scores is 300 to 850. A lot of people ask me, do you start at 300? No, you actually have to do a lot of things that are negative in order to get down to a 300. Typically, people start at about a 600 and then build from there. You don't typically start at 300. We actually, we don't start from 0 and then build our way up to 850. We start somewhere around 600. Now, what is good, excellent, fair? It's relative. I mean, this is a general, what do you call it, like range of what, but it depends on the context of what you're applying for. Like, for example, if you wanted like the Gold American Express, maybe a 740, a 720 is not really high enough to get their like very, very best, or a mortgage lender. So it's a little bit relative depending on what that particular creditor or lender thinks is excellent credit. So there could be a little bit of variance, but that's general. 67% of Americans have a score in the good range or higher. So majority of Americans have good or excellent credit. Okay, so these are the 5 factors that actually go into that algorithm and how they're weighted into your scores. You can see the most important weighted measure of your credit score is paying on time. It is so important to pay on time. One late payment can negatively affect your score for up to 2 years, and that late payment can be reported. It can hang out there in your credit report for 7 years, but really the effect of it after a couple years sort of starts to wane as time passes. And then the other really important part is 30% of your score is how much do you owe? So for example, if you have credit cards that have those available amount of credit and you're hopefully not utilizing all of it, the more of your available credit you're using, the more it negatively affects your score, because that's weighted 30% of your score. So just paying on time and how much you owe, that's 65% of your score. So those are the really important things to be thinking about with how is my credit score calculated. And then we also have credit mix. So they like to see that we can handle different types of credit. Like it's not just credit cards. Maybe we have an installment loan. Maybe we have a car payment. Maybe we have a mortgage. You don't have to have one of each, but they like to see that you can handle different types of debt. The other thing is new credit. That's where the hard inquiries comes into play. So trying not to have too many hard inquiries in a short period of time. The exception is if you're applying for a loan like a mortgage or a car loan, FICO score will look at just 45, like you have 45 days to complete that loan process, because typically when we're shopping for a home mortgage, you know, we're going around, you've got a broker maybe that's trying to find different lenders to get the best rate, or maybe you're shopping for an auto loan, maybe you're going to the credit union, the bank, the car dealerships, and they realize that you're not trying to buy 20 homes or 20 cars, you're just trying to shop around for a loan. So typically, if that's done within a 45-day period, they will only count it as one hit. They won't count it, and if they do, you have the right to ask them to remove that from the inquiries, because that does affect 10% of your score. And then the other one, which is kind of hidden by the camera, is how long have you had history? That's 15% of your score. So the longer you have credit, the more that history builds. I think in mine it said, okay, your first credit card is like going back to 1996 is what's been recorded on my. So sometimes people will ask me, I've had this credit card for a long time, like especially during the pandemic, they had all these airline.
That's an answer for later.
Oh,
That's an answer.
I wasn't going to give away the answer,
Okay,
but
okay.
they'll ask me, hey, Vincenza, should I close this account? I've had it for like 10 years. I have this American Express travel rewards card, but I'm not traveling and I'm paying a $350 a year annual fee. So we'll get to that later, but that is a common question that comes up. Should I close out a credit card that I'm not using? What are the pros and cons of that? Okay, so we understand that the most influential factor is paying on time and not maxing out our credit. And I'm going to give you some tips on like what are some ways to boost our credit. So here we go, cracking the code, just some things to know. So from a lender's perspective, let's say you're getting a mortgage. Oftentimes, there's effectively no difference between a home buyer with a credit score of 740 and say a score of 800. Some people are really fixed on, I got to get that 800, I got to get that 850. But in reality, from the mortgage lender's perspective, a lot of times a 740 and an 800 or 820 is going to be the same. It's still considered excellent. The exception with that sometimes is if there's going to be a PMI in the loan, they want to see a slightly higher credit score to qualify for the very best rates. And then the credit score, some people ask, you know, does your credit score change? on a monthly, a yearly, a daily, all of the above. Because every time information is updated in the credit report, that's obviously going to calculate the credit score. So think of the credit report as taking a snapshot in time. If somebody wants to pull my credit report today to get my score, and I have a Visa that I put everything on it, right? And then I just pay it off at the end of the month. But if they're pulling it today, my bill's not due for 2 weeks, and they see that there's this high balance on it, it's going to affect my score because that amount owed is going to be kind of high. So that's why when I actually applied for a mortgage in the last, this was a few years ago, this is what happened. And they said, Vincenza, you have a balance on your Visa. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I use it all the time for everything so I can get my cash back. And he said, well, I'm trying to qualify you for the very best rate. And you need to go in there today. You need to pay it off. And then I'm going to go in a couple of days and pull your credit score again. And I was like, oh, okay, good to know. I had no idea it was, that's why they say when you're applying for a loan, like, don't do anything, it's very sensitive. That's when it really matters about like really nitty gritty paying attention to what's charged on my card, what are my balances, things like that. So that was something I learned. And then again, most mortgage lenders view 740 to 850 as excellent. And then the exception was the PMI. So let's talk about the lifetime value. We talked about in the beginning about there's that study that says, it's worth about $100,000 having one semester of financial literacy in high school. But really the lifetime value of good credit could be in tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, because your credit score affects your mortgage loan rates, rentals. 48% of landlords say the results of a credit check are among the top 3 factors that they use when deciding upon choosing a tenant for their rentals, right? And then personal loans, think about credit cards. Your interest rate on your credit cards is going to be affected by your credit score. Your insurance rates. A recent Wallet Hub study found that on average, people with no credit pay 67% more for car insurance than compared to people with excellent credit. So it makes a difference. And then homeowners with fair credit can expect to pay 32% more for their home insurance policy than those with excellent credit. So if we think about this, it's hard to see here, but what it's talking about is the difference in what your interest rate would be on a mortgage if you had fair credit versus if you had excellent credit. And the payment difference is about $300 a month. And over time, it's like almost $130,000 over the life of the loan, just by having a better credit score. And let me throw this in there. If somebody has excellent credit and is paying $2,500 on their mortgage versus somebody who's doesn't have excellent credit and maybe is paying $2,900 or $2,800, and that extra $300, if you invested that $300 in, a good index fund that's going to earn you 8% over 30 years, that's $415,000 extra that person could have in their lifetime. So the value of having good credit and the importance of being able to save on credit, it's exponential because maybe they have more money to save for retirement, to save for other goals, that it's not being locked into, for example, this mortgage payment. So that's why the importance of using credit to our advantage where it can actually save us money, and over lifetime, it frees up that money to do other things to build up our financial wellness. And because, our money competes for lots of things, and it's not just one thing that my money is going to do for me. So that's why it's really important to be thinking about that when you're able to save money because you have good credit, because you learn about what are the things that I should or shouldn't do when working with credit. Just some hacks about if somebody's trying to really boost their score, maybe they're in a particular situation where they want to, what's that?
About 10 minutes left.
Okay. 10% is, we talked about, remember how I said 30% of your score was how much you owe? Ideally, you don't want more than 30% of your available credit being used up. So let me give you an example. If I have a $1,000 limit on my credit card, try not to have more than $300 charged on it at any time. The sweet spot is keeping it at 10% or less. That gives you an extra boost to your score. And another hack If you want to lower your credit utilization, you could open another credit card. That's going to increase your overall credit limit because it looks at all of the cards that you have in your profile. So if I'm only using 300 of 1,000 and then I add another card and now I've got 10,000 available to me, obviously that percentage goes down. So that's a hack that people can use. And we say use it with caution because for somebody to have another credit card that has a $10,000 limit might be tempting, that they might spend more money. So use that, you know, you have to judge yourself if that's something that, that you could do.
Home equity loans like this kind of the same thing where it's an open credit, like so credit cards are like an open credit.
Yeah, it's unsecured.
So, and a home equity loan is an open credit.
Hmm.
Is that the same? I mean, my students and I are kind of discussing.
Yeah, well, so a line of credit works that way, and a home equity loan is different because it's actually like a mortgage. You have to go through the whole process of.
Okay, so it's even though it's an open loan.
Yeah, so you do have that. Yeah, it's like a line of credit that's open.
So their question was, how does that affect my credit score differently than a credit card?
So
I didn't have an answer.
So we don't actually know that. So that's the thing about the credit score. They tell us these factors, they give us some general idea of what goes into a credit score, but they don't share with us those little intricacies of, because think about it, if we all knew exactly what to do, we would all hack it. We'd all be at 850. So a lot of it's proprietary. So I actually don't know. I do know that retail credit cards are considered junk credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus like a major credit card because retail cards are easier to qualify for.
I
So
think the home equity being an open line of credit would be kind of the same thing. How much are you using on it? I mean,
certainly it's going to look at, I just don't know if it's weighted because they're constantly,
stronger police or
if it, exactly.
what's the word? I don't know.
Yeah, if it has a,
To it. And
I don't know that with certainty. But I know it's going to look at your overall, it's going to look at like what's all your available credit. Yeah, but that's a great question, but some of it is a mystery. So we know so much. And then some hacks, just time your credit inquiries carefully. Talked about if you're going to be applying for a loan, try to keep it in a 45-day period. Always disputing inaccurate information on your credit report. Again, checking it regularly. And you can freeze your credit report. I talked about some extra steps that you can do to really secure and lock down your credit. It's free to do so. There isn't a whole lot of explanation in here on how to do that, and that's why I added this slide. The CFPB is trying to play nice with the credit bureaus, and the credit bureaus don't like credit freezes because it actually blocks you off some of the marketing lists, and credit reporting agencies make money by selling your information. So that's why there isn't a whole lot of information. So you just have to go to each of the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and they each have their own process for freezing your credit, which makes it difficult for somebody that's not you to apply for new credit. I have all of mine frozen. And if I want to thaw it, I just go online, username and password, and I thaw it. And either it can thaw it indefinitely or thaw it for the day or the week, like if I'm applying for a car loan, etc. So another great way, you can also call them to do that. And it's pretty instantaneous online. It's like within 24 hours, it'll freeze or thaw your credit report access. Any questions? All right, our last little bit, we'll just have a little fun with some credit myth busters, and Kellen's gonna walk us through that. And just pass around, everybody gets one of each.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to play a little game. I'm sure a lot of us remember the show on Discovery Channel, Mythbusters. So we're just going to talk about a lot of credit myths and decide whether they are busted or false, meaning false, or whether they are confirmed, meaning true. So we're handing each you out a red or a green card. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up a credit myth that we've heard a ton. All of these are questions or comments that we've heard a lot while teaching our classes. So if you think that statement is true, hold up your green card. If you think the myth confirmed, or if you think the myth is busted or false, hold up your red card. And we'll see sort of what the consensus is in the room, and then we'll talk about all these myths. We've got 5 to go through. And we've got a few minutes to go through them, so we won't spend a ton of time on any of them, but these are things that as you're looking at teaching in your classrooms, these are the things that adults are going into life thinking and believing. Some of them are true, some of them may not be. So myth number 1, checking my credit report can hurt my credit score. What do we think? Red is busted, green is, I'm seeing all reds, amazing. That is very true. This myth is busted. Vincenzo talked about hard and soft credit pulls. We can check our own information as much as we want and it will never have any negative effect on our credit. It's only when you apply for credit and someone checks it for the purpose of approving you for a loan that it has an effect. Why is that timer up there? I don't even know what I pushed.
I was wondering if that was something you added.
Nope. I don't know how to get it to go away. There we go. Okay, myth number 2. There is a recommended number of credit cards I should have in my wallet. True, false? What do you think? True, false? I'm seeing red all around. I saw some faces that were like, what's it? There is a red on that. What's... Well, it varies greatly. I just did a quick Google search. Equifax recommends 2 to 3. NerdWallet says no less than 5 credit cards. Experian says at least 1. Forbes says no recommendation. So it varies so much out there. But at the end of the day, there is no recommended number of credit cards you should have. It varies on your situation. Maybe you're someone who just, you know yourself, you overspend if you have those credit cards. So having a ton of credit cards is just going to be worse for you in the end. So there is no recommendation. Like we talked about, credit history and credit limit really do impact your score. So it could be a good idea to maybe have a couple credit cards so you have a good credit limit. Yeah, question?
So is it just basically about how you manage your money? Are you managing it
Yes.
for one card? And if you need a little bit more cards to help it look like a better number and how you're managing it, then more cards might be beneficial for you.
Exactly. I love how you put that. The number doesn't matter. It's more how you use the cards that matters. So there is no recommended number. Even though a lot of credit card companies will say you should have at least 10 of our cards. So myth number 3, I can still use my credit cards and other accounts. Oh, it did go away.
Okay, there it goes.
Oh, there we go. I can still use my credit cards and other accounts when I freeze my credit. So you put a freeze on your credit, can you still use your credit cards and other accounts? Seen some greens, like other credit accounts, like home equity loans or car loans or things like that. If I freeze my credit.
That's what I said. He said, and you freeze them. Why? I didn't catch why you freeze them.
So that nobody other than myself can access it.
So nobody. Okay. So you have to give them.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get new ones. You can still use your accounts. Putting a freeze on your credit makes it so nobody, including you, can apply for new credits. They can't pull your credit reports if they're frozen.
It's like putting 2-factor authentication on your credit.
Yeah, so you have to go in, unfreeze it, and then you can apply for new credit. But it doesn't affect any accounts you already have open. But it is a recommended thing for identity theft protection, and it's completely free. But
You had to pay for it.
the myth that we hear a lot is that freezing it, well, I still want to be able to use my cards, so I'm not going to freeze my credit. Doesn't work that way. So myth number 4, it is a good idea to close credit cards that I don't use. It keeps, I don't know what I'm doing to it.
Yeah, it's...
Okay, it's back up. It is a good idea to close credit cards I don't use. Who thinks that that's true? It is a good idea. Who thinks it's false? It's not a good idea.
Halfway.
I'm seeing both cards raised up there. I'm seeing red. So what are your thoughts? Why could it be either way? Because your face tells me you're thinking either way.
I guess because they look at like how much is available to you and how much you're using.
Yeah?
Plus it also is on your history, the longer you have that credit card open,
Uh-huh.
it looks better on the reports.
Yeah. All of those are completely valid reasons. The answer to this one, it froze again. The answer to this one, it's a big question mark. It's in between for this one. Like we were talking about, it could be a good thing to have that higher credit limit, and to make sure that you've got that credit history could be very good. But if you're someone who's just using all of those credit cards to the limits, or if you're paying high annual fees for cards that you don't use, it could be worth it, depending on your situation, to just close them.
So you might see a temporary dip in a credit score when you do close an account, but over a little bit of time, because of all the other stuff that's happening, it's going to go. That happened to me. I closed some that I didn't.
Do you need me to unplug and plug back in?
No. Because of all the other stuff that's happening. So not
okay.
a big deal, but just use your own judgment.
Yeah, you may see temporary dips, but if you're someone that you just need to pay your balances down, closing them could be really positive. And then,
So why does it go down? I'm not understanding.
because what you've done is you're using up, remember we talked about credit utilization? So if you close that account, number one, it's going to affect your credit history because there's not going to have that activity. And number two, let's say it could show that I'm using more of my available credit because I closed that one.
for example, if you have 2 cards with $10,000 limit, your total credit limit is $20,000. If you're using 10,000 of that, that's only 50%. But you close one of them and all of a sudden that's 100%. So it looks like you're maxing out all of your available credit. So the more limit you have could be higher.
That could change. There's so many moving parts to the credit.
Yeah, there's a lot of different parts.
This goes up, that goes down.
If it's a card you've had open for 20 years, getting rid of that history could also make a dip.
So my wife's one of these credit card hackers.
Yeah,
Okay, and so we have a lot.
Yeah, rewards, airlines, miles, points,
So we're
hotels.
trying, like, I have a business, and so
Yeah.
it's easy for us to hit that 4,000 over 2 months to get 100,000 points.
Yep.
And so it would make no sense for us to close our Amex that we've had for 17 years.
Yeah.
But the one that we already hit our bonus points in
Close that?
in 4 months, yeah, close that.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. It's
Right.
called credit card hacking,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Just so then we can get another
Yep.
card and get that bonus again.
Yep.
Yeah,
Totally,
so
it's totally.
with that one, there really is no right answer, but that is a question we get all the time, is should I close my cards?
Yeah.
So we'll just skip to the end. Hopefully we'll be able to get things back up and going with this in just a second.
What was the last one? The last one. Was that it?
There was one last one that we can do super quick. Oh, hello. So the last one we were going to look at was let me get it up here. Maybe. Hold on. Let's see, enter full screen. My relationship status impacts my credit score, i.e. getting married. Is that true or false? Green or red? Does getting married impact your credit score?
If you let your spouse put your name on it. I don't know.
Great, I'm seeing some red and blue. I'm seeing some red. Definitely. So the act of getting married or changing your relationship status does not affect your credit. Credit is individual, each person. Relationship status shows up nowhere on your credit reports. But like you were saying, if you get married and you're added as a joint user on your spouse's credit cards and they're added as a joint, you're an authorized user on yours, or you combine accounts, you get a mortgage together, like those things, in those cases, you can affect each other's credit depending on how the cards or the accounts are being used. But simply getting married, changing your relationship status does not impact your credit. But using credit together can impact the credit of both parties. So what? The reason we were talking about all these myths is because, we mostly work with adults. Sometimes we work with young adults, sometimes older adults that have all of these myths and misconceptions, these different things about credit. The best way to make sure that people are getting the best information is to give it to them at the very first, which is what you all are doing in your classrooms. So being able to know some of these myths, some of these questions, these are the most common ones that we get, can really help build that strong foundation for your students to be able to not make those confusions or mistakes as they go out into the world. So we've got 3 things we want to invite you to do as you are learning more about credit to be able to take it into the classroom. Go to annualcreditreport.com and check your credit reports. That's number 1. Get a sense for how it looks for you. Get a sense for how to check it. The more familiar you can become with your credit report, the easier it'll be to teach it to your students. And then look for any errors and dispute them. It's estimated that, over 80% of people have an error on their credit report.
And some of them aren't a big deal.
Yeah, like my name was spelled wrong on one of them. My name's Kellen. I'm used to it being misspelled. Wasn't the biggest deal, right? But look for any errors. You may find something like I did, that someone was using my social to open credit cards. And then put a freeze on your credit. It's a simple thing you can do. It only takes a few minutes to make sure that those identity theft problems are not happening.
You can also put a fraud alert, which is free.
Yes, there is some information in this booklet for how to protect yourself against identity theft.
Discover saying, we're sorry, Vincenzo, we couldn't open a credit card for you because your credit reports are frozen. Guess what? I didn't apply for a Discover credit card. So somebody has my information, which most people have all the hacks that we get. And so that was telling me, hey, somebody's on the dark web attempting to use my stuff. So I put a fraud alert, and that's in place for a year. I can extend it if I want to. Again, it's another layer of protection. People's hands off my information.
So we are at time and don't want to keep you any longer, but like we said, we're a grant funded program. The reason we're able to do these classes for free is because we ask for surveys. So if you'll do us a favor and scan this QR code, it's a short 8 questions. We also have paper surveys if you prefer to do it that way. It's a short 8 questions. Let's just do it for free. We have some prizes for you. We'll have them here up front to say thank you for joining us today and thanks for participating. Oh, were you scanning? Oh, apologies.
And we've got some swag here. You can come pick something if you show us. You don't have to go all the way through and put in like your personal information. That's if you were doing it online and we need to reach out to you to send you a prize. Once you complete it, just come up here and we'll give you a prize.
Yeah, come up here to us. We'll give you a prize.
Also,